OBR Straight Talk, Episode 5. We're going to party like it's 2016. Dilly dilly!
All right, everybody, welcome back to the OBR Straight Talk podcast, Episode 5. I am Bob Evans. He's Scott Kennison, and Scott and all the listeners out there, we are no longer losers as the Cleveland Browns defeated the New York Jets last week. And yes, we know it's a couple of days late, but I was so happy and so excited about this win. I had to shoot out to Vegas for the weekend and celebrate with all of my friends. We were going up and down the strip, going inside and outside of casinos, chanting, "Here we go, Brownies," and Baker Mayfield. And by the end of the weekend, I think the casino security guards were a little tired of us because they told my one buddy to shut up finally for yelling Baker Mayfield on day 4.
OBR fans, OBR members, I just have one question for you. Got to channel Al Michaels here. Do you believe in miracles?
Oh, we got that win.
I am so excited about this, so pumped up that I am either having a migraine or a stroke, and I'm not sure which one because my migraine simulates strokes. And if I all of a sudden start talking nonsense, well, more nonsense than usual on the podcast, that's because the aphasia kicked in and I'm no longer able to coherently communicate, which sometimes happens. And if you hear a thump, it might mean that I died in the middle of the podcast. Well, and Scott, Bob just edited it up and sent it out.
Well, Scott, I hope that certainly does not happen because I am not a trained medical professional, so I can't really help other than call 911, I guess, if that happens. But you know what I can help with is let's just dive right in. I mean, we know what's going to happen. We're hopefully going to have Lane on a little bit later to, dive into a little more straight talk, get his thoughts on Baker, his thoughts on Tyrod going to the bench, maybe find out a little bit about how the locker room feels about Tyrod. Because obviously from a football playing standpoint decision, we've talked about it. We've beat the dead horse, for weeks now. We did not feel like Tyrod Taylor, or at least I didn't. You kind of were a little bit back and forth, but as the performances have come along, you were right there with me about Baker Mayfield. But what we saw on the field was not the type of guy who can actually win you a football game. That's why I joked around and said they're playing not to lose the game with Tyrod Taylor. And then from the moment that Baker Mayfield stepped in against the New York Jets last week, the whole offense was completely different. People argued with me for weeks on Twitter, Scott. Oh, well, how is Baker Mayfield going to suddenly make the offensive line better? How is he suddenly going to make the playmakers better? We don't have any of them. All of the same conversation. It's not Tyrod Taylor's fault. But you clearly saw that it was. You saw what happens when you put a quarterback behind center who makes a half a second quicker decisions. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Tyrod Taylor holding onto the ball for 3 seconds from snap to throw versus Baker Mayfield, who was right around 2.5, I believe was the final numbers after the game on Thursday. That half a second is so critical. Your offensive linemen don't have to block as long. You get a guy like Baker who puts the ball out in front, puts it into windows that were utterly incredible. I was in my season seats from the dog pound, and the view on some of these throws, I don't know how he got it in there, Scott. It's been so long since I've seen a quarterback in person with the ability to do that for the Cleveland Browns. It's like I'm watching the other games, the other teams play and the ones that have a real quarterback. And I'm like, oh, man, I wish I had a quarterback who could make those throws. And granted, yes, it was against the Jets. And the Jets are, they looked really good in week 1, but they didn't look good in week 2. And now they lost to us. And but they came out of the gates good against us, too. So I'm watching a quarterback in Baker Mayfield just out there just throwing dimes. And it's not just the Browns fan in me. There's a Jets fan sitting in front of me, turns around and goes, how the hell did he put it in that window? And that comment happened multiple times during that game. It wasn't alcohol induced. It was football fans watching and saying for the first time since the 90s, the Cleveland Browns finally have their damn quarterback.
And it's obvious. And this wasn't Baker Mayfield in college throwing jump balls to a superior wide receiver who's just outplaying the defense. He's not running through wide open, 15 yards open and no one is near the wide receiver. This was Baker Mayfield, as you said, throwing the ball into tight windows. And not only that, throwing the ball before the wide receiver was open and where the wide receiver would be open when the ball arrived. But even beyond that, Tyrod Taylor had played himself out of the job in the first half. Concussion or no concussion, Tyrod Taylor was abysmal in the first half. He underthrew Callaway twice. Walk-in touchdowns to Callaway twice. You asked the question, how's Baker Mayfield going to make the playmakers better? Well, by not underthrowing a wide-open Callaway who's behind the defense. Tyrod was hesitant. He wasn't decisive. All of the things that Tyrod is, Baker Mayfield is not. Baker is absolutely fearless. He's not afraid to throw an interception. If he throws an interception, he's going to come back and keep throwing. He is a gunslinger. They say, he's compared to Drew Brees because of the height, but he's got a lot of Brett Favre in him too. There's not a window he can't get the ball into. There's not a throw he can't make, and he has no lack of confidence. So yeah, he's a lot of Drew Brees, but he's got a little bit of the old gunslinger in him too. And I mean, it's obvious. It's not even a debate as to whether Tyrod Taylor can go back as the starting quarterback if there's not an injury to Baker at this point. Knock on wood. The real question you have to ask is, and I hate to go to this already, but how the hell did Hugh not see this in practice, in preseason, every single day? How did Hugh not see? You really have to question Hugh that he couldn't see that Baker Mayfield had this in practice every day and that Baker Mayfield wasn't the guy who made your offense run more effectively. Even the running game is better under Baker Mayfield because the teams had to respect the pass. The linebackers had to hold just a little bit longer to make sure that it wasn't a pass. It even opened things up for Carlos Hyde. It made everything better. I mean, it's obvious. Tyrod, I wish you all the best. You're going to collect a lot of money now to back up Baker Mayfield because Baker's the real deal. Is he going to play like this every single week? Absolutely not. He's probably not going to look that good this week against Oakland. I hope he does, but there's going to be some regression. I mean, no quarterback's going to go out and play the way Baker did. Drew Brees isn't going to play. Aaron Rodgers isn't going to play the way Baker did last week every single week. So you can't expect that again. But it's an open and shut case at this point. Baker's a starter the rest of the way. Let him learn. Let him get better. Let him get the experience. And you start planning for the future around Baker Mayfield.
I want to go back to what you said about Hugh Jackson. And the question you asked was, how did he not see this? And I think, we've all questioned Hugh Jackson. We've all wanted him gone already. I mean, talking about a guy who went 1-31 in his first 2 seasons here and whose job was probably saved by Baker Mayfield's performance against the Jets on Thursday night. Not saying he was going to get fired now, but if they lose that game and then going into after the Oakland game, they have a nice little onslaught on the schedule where things could get ugly. I think that when you look at Hugh Jackson, last year he didn't get his veteran bridge quarterback. And then there were the rumors that he wanted Tyrod Taylor last year, and the Browns didn't get him. And then he tried to trade a second and a third for A.J. McCarron to be his bridge quarterback to put Deshaun Kaiser back on the bench. And then, here we come full circle, year 3. Hugh Jackson not wanting to, again, start a rookie quarterback from day one. And so I'm not one of the people that likes to give Hugh Jackson the benefit of the doubt because I don't. But what I think was going on is he finally got his guy, quote unquote, in terms of a quarterback. He got his veteran bridge guy. So those rose colored glasses were on and he's like, oh, this is Tyrod. It's the Robert Griffin III, earth moving beneath Hugh's feet during the practice type of things. It was that whole scenario where Hugh got his guy and Hugh was going to play his guy. And he was going to play his guy until his guy looked so awful and so bad that he could no longer justify it. We were sitting there and it was the possession before Tyrod got hurt. On Thursday night and hurt in quotation marks. I understand he got a concussion, but we were fully certain that he was getting pulled after that possession anyways. So right before that possession started, Baker Mayfield is on the sideline warming up, like all throughout the kick process and everything. He's warming up, throwing the ball. And then when the kick goes up, he grabs his helmet, he has his helmet on, and he's getting ready to run out onto the field. Baker Mayfield was going into that football game, the drive that Tyrod ended up sustaining the concussion. He was going into the football game, and Hugh Jackson reached his arm out and held Baker back. And we all looked around at each other in the dog pound, and we said, Tyrod has one last drive. This is his last drive, regardless of the outcome of, the injury. Literally, the only thing that could have happened there is if Tyrod marched that team down the field and they scored a touchdown. That probably would have been the only way that Tyrod would have stayed in that football game. Now, it just so happened that he sustained the injury, which they put him in the concussion protocol and they pulled him from the game and then Baker came in. But barring anything but a touchdown, and he was coming out of that game any way you look at it. Like I said, Baker was running out on the field. So to bring it all together, I think it's just Hugh finally got his guy, and he was going to play his guy until he made it absolutely unplayable, and 4 of 14 for 19 yards and 3 sacks for a reduction of 22 yards is going to be that final straw. Because it doesn't matter who it is. You can't justify keeping him in that game. No matter if he's your favorite quarterback in the history of the game, you cannot justify keeping Tyrod Taylor in.
No, Hugh was, I'll agree with you. Hugh was probably afraid of running into another Deshaun Kaiser situation with a rookie quarterback or running into another Cody Kessler situation. And he thought, I've got a bridge guy. I need to win some games to keep my job. It was out of fear. It was out of fear, absolutely, that's where that would go to. But it doesn't surprise me. Tyrod Taylor, you said, Tyrod had one more drive. Todd Haley was probably trying to put Baker in, and Hugh held him back and said, let's give him one more chance. And Tyrod was indefensible. Look, I don't dislike Tyrod Taylor. He's a guy you want to root for. You want to root for Tyrod to be successful. But in the end, you couldn't justify keeping him in there. Not only was he 4 of 15, not only did the team have negative yards when he was in at quarterback, he was missing wide open throws that you have to make at the NFL level. I mean, when you got a speedster behind the defense, you don't underthrow him. And that would be the third time this year that he underthrew a fast wide receiver behind the defense.
Real quick, did you see him show up Callaway on the field after that? You see the video?
When he was trying to tell him how to catch the ball, to go up for the ball?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have, as a head coach, the minute he walked off the field, I would have taken a tablet, put it in his face, and said, if you ever show up my receiver on the field again for underthrowing the ball by 8 yards, you can go ride the bench, and we will get Drew Stanton to be the backup quarterback to Baker Mayfield.
That's not a leader.
No.
Own your mistake. That was your mistake, Tyrod, for underthrowing the ball. To sit, I saw that, and I was losing my mind. You're going to actually sit there and tell Callaway to come back and fight for the ball that you underthrew? Throw the damn ball. Throw the damn ball. This is simple at this point. Throw the ball. So, ultimately, it's a good day for Browns fans because you have a quarterback who's competent in Baker Mayfield, who is unafraid, and who has, it looks like at this point, unlimited upside to be your quarterback, and the offense moves when he's in there. And now we've got to see what happens this week against Oakland. And we got to see if that was fool's gold or if he can continue to do that. And I think he can. And not only do I think that Baker Mayfield's going to continue to look better, I think Carlos Hyde's going to continue to look better because that was important. Carlos Hyde was averaging almost 5 yards a carry. He had 2 touchdowns, and it was an effective 90 yards on 20 carries.
Yeah, 23 carries for 98 yards and 2 TDs.
What was he have? 4.5 yards a carry?
Basically. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. And it was an effective 4.5 yards a carry. And they were running off tackle with him. They were running some more zone schemes with the run blocking to allow Carlos to do what he can do. Stuff we asked for, right?
Yeah.
They hurt us.
Had to clap for Todd Haley and using zone schemes with Carlos Hyde because, he only has about the last 8 years of his collegiate and NFL career of experience of showing why he's effective in that. But, hey, whatever.
Yep.
The Carlos Hyde thing, it was so much fun leading up to that because it's his birthday. He's at the hospital with his wife expecting their child. And everybody's like, Carlos Hyde is going to run into this stadium during practice, like during warmups, get stretched out on the field. And we were joking around. We're like, Carlos is going for 150 and 2 touchdowns. Now, he didn't get the 150 part, but it was just like the whole fun experience of it. And then we look down on the field and there he is. I think there's 15 minutes maybe left before the game starts, and he's down there. He's getting stretched out. We're like, oh, it's a big day. The wife still hasn't had the baby yet, but he's going off today. So, no, it was great to see Carlos Hyde get going. What's even more fun about Hyde, I think that we'll see it a little bit more with Baker back there, is I think Hyde is going to get some more targets out of the backfield. I mean, he ended up getting 3 targets on the game, caught 2 of them for 5 yards. But I saw some, our beat reporter, Fred Greedham, over here at the OBR. He was at camp today, and he was sharing videos out on Twitter of Baker working with Carlos Hyde and working with the running backs on some more passes out of the backfield. So I think you're going to see maybe Hyde get a little more involved in the passing game as well.
It was interesting. The Browns were effectively running some bubble screens and some quick out passes with Baker Mayfield there. And it's amazing what happens even on a screen when the ball is out faster and on target and where it needs to be. The offense just clicks with Baker Mayfield. And we've talked a lot about the offense in this win, but the defense was huge too. Mm-hmm. The defense kept them in that game. It was 14-3. And when Baker came in and he started moving the team at halftime, I was just sitting there thinking, if the defense can throw a goose egg or close to a goose egg, keep them out of the end zone in the second half, Baker's going to go win this game. All they got to keep them out of the end zone in the second half, and the defense successfully did that. They gave up 3 points in the second half, and it allowed Baker the time to go get them the lead and get them the win. And that defense in the past would have folded, could have folded. And that defense went out there and got off the field again. This defense, it just turns the ball over too.
This defense, we have to go back to our conversation that we had in the very first podcast, because I have been so damn impressed with Terrence Mitchell. We're talking about when Dorsey went out there and he made all of these offseason acquisitions. He gave the big money to TJ Carey. He signed EJ Gaines. He went out and he signed Terrence Mitchell with what looked like was just a depth signing, a guy that had, that he knows has some little bit of starting experience, but it looked like just another depth signing. Then they went out and drafted Denzel Ward, and it was like, okay, I don't know how this whole thing is going to shake out. I mean, guys like Gaines and Mitchell, with not a lot of money on their contracts, they could end up getting cut if some of the rookies, they drafted Simeon Thomas, who ended up getting cut. It was looking like Terrence Mitchell was just going to be a depth guy. This kid has come out here, and he earned the second starting corner spot across from Ward, and then he has a nose for the football. I've never seen a corner just be so effective at stripping the football the way he does. Yes, we've talked about it before. He does get burned when he has to go up against a receiver and it's going across. But when he's allowed to be physical and line up and go up and punch a guy in the face, not literally, but you know what I'm saying. He's been so good. And I mean, he had an interception in this game. Denzel Ward. Let's give a second here, and this isn't because we're Buckeyes fans. This isn't because we're Browns fans. This is just pure football. Anybody out there who has a damn word to say about the Browns passing on Bradley Chubb for Denzel Ward, you need to get your eyes checked. You need to pay attention, because this kid is not only exceeding everybody's expectations, he's firmly in contention right now and possibly leading it to be defensive rookie of the year. This kid is special. He's a Buckeye, which makes it that much better, because at least we're finally drafting Buckeyes again. But he has been so good. Even the times that he's gotten beaten, the Antonio Brown touchdown, the Michael Thomas touchdown, like, he's getting beaten on plays that are literally nearly, like, you can't defend those type of throws, and you can't defend those type catches. He is not out there making dumb rookie mistakes. Nope. This kid has been so good, and I had to give a shout out to him, and it's just, you're looking at a really special player here, Browns fans, and you should really appreciate it and go buy 21 jerseys.
Here's the thing. You knew in college that Denzel Ward was a physical cornerback who liked to go after the ball. And not all defensive backs are ball hawks. Not all cornerbacks like to play physical. And he's not a big corner. He's a fast speed corner, and he's an aggressive corner, but he's also not afraid to get in there and get physical and play some bump and run, tough coverage. And he's fearless to go find the ball and go get the ball. And sometimes that doesn't carry over to the NFL level, and he's playing at the NFL level exactly like he did in college. He's not afraid of it. And what's even crazier about that is he went up against the best wide receiver in the league, against a Hall of Fame quarterback in his first week, and he went up against one of the top 5 wide receivers in the game in Michael Thomas, and another surefire first ballot, one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks ever in his second week, and he was out there making plays, and he more than held his own, and he won a lot of those battles. You can't ask for more from the kid. You really can't. He is what Joe Hayden was supposed to be. He is a shutdown corner. And while, yes, a defensive end who can get after the quarterback and pass rush is important, Revis Island is just as important. If you got a shutdown corner that can take away the other team's best wide receiver on his own, that allows you to do a lot more defensively with your blitz packages, with your zone coverage schemes. You can get a lot more aggressive as a defensive coordinator. And Denzel Ward is a guy who is going to make life a lot easier eventually for Greg Williams, if not right now, to just know you can go take the other team's best wide receiver and I can then make sure to scheme coverage for their second best wide receiver. And it allows your safeties to get more aggressive. It allows your linebackers to get more aggressive. It allows you to blitz more aggressively. And it's a tremendous weapon and a tremendous tool to have. And it's a great draft pick. And if you got a problem with this draft pick, as Bob said, re-examine your eyes. You can't ask for more out of Ward than you already have. Yeah. Did he get beat a couple times? Yeah, but he was right there in that coverage. And then when he got beat in Thursday's game on the one pass he got beat on in man-to-man coverage, he came back and stripped the ball away for a fumble. He was right there to go make a play. He doesn't quit on the play. This is a kid who's going to make something happen. And he fits into a Greg Williams defense beautifully.
Switching gears to the front seven real quick. Got 3 hell yeahs and a 1 what the hell is going on. Larry Ogunjobi has been absolutely special this year. I mean, this kid came out here as a defensive tackle against the Jets. 8 total tackles, 4 of them solo, 2 tackles for a loss. Aside from just reading off the box score, kid was just disruptive in the middle of that defense.
Warren Sapp 2.0.
And that's, people are calling him Baby Sapp on Twitter, and it's not just Browns fans. He is so special, and he's playing next to Myles Garrett. Like, so people are,
he's outshining Myles Garrett right now.
I mean, Myles Garrett had 2 sacks. He's another hell yeah candidate from the game. But I mean, he had 2 sacks, disrupting, collapsing the pocket. But those 2 on the same side of the damn defensive line, that's going to be nightmares. Not just this year. I mean, nightmares for potentially the next 5 to 6 years.
And Emmanuel Ogbah isn't even in this picture yet.
No, there's no Ogbah right now. They're getting that much pressure without Ogbah on the other side. But you know what? My third hell yeah in that front seven, Chris Smith. Finally, something from our free agent acquisition. Every time I looked up, he was in there playing a lot for Ogbah this week. Every time I looked up during the course of this game, he was around the football, being disruptive. He had 3 tackles for a loss in this one. He was making big plays in the backfield at the line of scrimmage, doing his job. And this is the guy who, when we signed him this offseason, everybody's like, oh, this is just a ho-hum depth signing. But what it was really important about it was when Ogbah and Garrett went down last year, you legitimately had nobody who could get to the quarterback. Like, the front seven was just a disaster. I think James Burgess Jr. ended up a first on the team in sacks out of everybody else that wasn't named Ogbah or Garrett. So you needed to get guys who are proven rotational depth and who could step up if somebody's down. And Chris Smith did it this week. I was really, really impressed with everything he did. Now my what the hell are you doing moment, Jamie Collins. Okay. We all knew that he's had questions about his play from New England. New England just doesn't trade good players away. They just don't do it. But we were excited at what we saw when we first got him in the trade, and they rewarded him with a long-term contract. And he was looking like every bit of the guy worthy of that contract before he got hurt and was lost for the year. We had heard the whispers around camp that he had lost a little bit. He had lost that athleticism, but they were hopeful that with his football intelligence and his leadership abilities that he would be able to step up. This guy is causing problems in a negative way for the Browns defense. He's making bad decisions. He's not maintaining gap assignments. And the problem the big issue that's going on right now is he's leaving his teammates hanging them out to dry. And with the way that this unit is playing as a whole, I would not be surprised if we see Greg Williams make a move here in the coming weeks, maybe even against the Raiders this week, and we start to see Jamie Collins' snap count go down. I mean, they were trying to trade him all offseason. That's confirmed to us. And we could not find a home for him. But this guy, he's like, seriously, when you watch back the game film, and our own Jake Burns talked about it in his key plays breakdown, he continuously is making mistakes on the defense that's not only making himself look bad, but it's hanging his teammates out to dry, and Greg Williams is going to get pissed and replace him soon.
My comment on the front seven, and this may strike some people is what are you talking about? He's been disruptive and he's doing what he's supposed to. And I'd love to ask Lane this when we talk to him in a couple of minutes because he's ready for us to call him here. But Myles Garrett has done a great job as a pass rusher, and he is disruptive there. But I think that he's part of the reason that the Browns are getting gashed on the ground at times. Either they are telling him to just blitz and not read if it's a pass or a run, or he is just deciding to just blitz around edge every time and not read if it's a pass or a run. I'm watching these run plays. If I was the offensive coordinator, I'd be calling run plays directly at Myles Garrett because he is just selling out on the blitz and he's not setting that edge. And if you run where Myles Garrett's supposed to be, he's not going to be there anymore. All you got to do is as the offensive tackle in front of him is give ground a little bit and make sure that it's almost like a screenplay. Let him through, run where he vacated. I feel that Myles Garrett has got to start doing a better job reading run and on run plays holding that edge, because I think he's so intent on getting around that offensive tackle that he's not always waiting to see that it's not a run play quick enough and he's 5 yards in the backfield and not in a position to set that edge. Am I wrong there? Am I misreading that? Or is that maybe strategically what Greg Williams is telling him to do?
So it could be one of two things. So I've noticed the same thing a lot during the games, and I've seen that he's been attacking, being very over-aggressive when it comes to his run defense. Now, it could be one of two things, and that's actually one of the things I wanted to watch back on the All-22 in between all of my travels, because I'm heading to New Orleans tomorrow, is that I want to know if it's Garrett or if it's just the way that the left tackle is playing him. Because I don't know if you remember this, but back when Joe Thomas talked about playing the left tackle position, he always said that when he had a more aggressive, very good pass rusher, he knew he wasn't going to just beat him one way. He had to mix it up throughout the course of the game. So he had to try to, maybe he wasn't going to take him out of the picture completely, but he would try to push him out of the picture. So allow him to be, like, if he knew he was an aggressive speed rusher guy, what he would just try to do is let him over pursue. So is that a problem for Garrett? Oh, absolutely. But he's young. I mean, he's got plenty of time to learn about it, but he's going to have to learn how to adjust, because you can't just keep doing that, because he's going to blow maintaining the edge. And you'll see it. You've seen it already this year with a number of long rushes going his direction.
I got to be real careful when I say this, because I'm not comparing Myles Garrett to this guy, and I'd lose all credibility if I actually tried to. But you can't be Cameron Wembley and have one move, which is a speed rush, and he doesn't. Myles Garrett has a lot of other moves.
He's got good moves.
But one of the problems with Cameron Wembley was the guy was just completely, I'm going to rush the passer, I'm going to rush the passer, I'm going to rush the passer. Now, if they're telling Myles Garrett to do that, then he's doing the right thing. But I think as time goes on, we will see Myles Garrett tend to tone that down a touch and work on reading out whether it's a run play or a pass play instead of selling out blitz, because my guess right now is either by design, Greg Williams is telling him to, or Myles Garrett is just doing it, that he is selling out on blitz and assuming that it's a pass first and then trying to adjust to it being a rush later. And we'll find out. As you said, we'll watch more stuff, and maybe Lane will have some insight on that. But I definitely think that that's part of the problems the Browns are having on the run defense, is that he's not out there trying to set that edge, either by design or by Greg Williams' design or by his own interpretation of how he's supposed to play the position.
Yeah, and we'll see how it all shakes out. Again, like, he's young,
and his play's been great. I am not criticizing his play. He's a massive weapon on that defense. He's disrupting the passing game. He's making plays. He made a big play in that Jets game. He's a disruptive force. I mean, you can't ask for much more out of a rookie defensive end than you're getting out of him. And those things, that football awareness, reading run pass, and figuring out when to be aggressive and when it's a trap to be aggressive, he'll get to that. So, and again, I know I threw Cameron Wembley out there. He is not Cameron Wembley. I'm not trying to say he's Cameron Wembley. Please don't put that on me. It was more a point of, you can't be successful in this league if you're going to sell out blitz every single time, because teams will figure out that's what you're going to do, and they'll Joe Thomas you. You can't just, as you were talking about speed rusher, you can't just do that. You've got to vary it up a bit. And I wonder right now if they're letting Myles Garrett over pursue to try to take him out of the play sometimes, especially on running plays, luring him like a screenplay and just saying, here you go, come on through, like waving the red flag in front of a bull and knowing you're going to get out of the way.
So 2 quick final thoughts here on the Jets game. Get your 2 final thoughts on the Jets game, and then we'll go ahead and welcome Lane in before we switch gears and focus on the Raiders. But I want to know what the hell is going on with Duke Johnson. We talked about it before, but now we're at the point now where 3 games in, he had 2 carries for 9 yards. He had 2 targets for 24 yards. One of them was a 15-yard catch. But this is a guy who, again, we talked about it before, and I was concerned coming into the season how many targets would actually be available for him in this offense with all the new additions. And this is a guy coming off of 90 plus targets last year, one of the top receiving running backs in all of football. And Todd Haley, of all people, who had Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh, can't figure out how the hell to get him involved in the offense. Maybe that was a product of Tyrod, and maybe with Baker out there, it'll be different, and maybe they'll split him out wide a little bit more. But right now, we're running into a big issue here where we just extended a guy, even though they didn't give him a lot of money, we extended a guy who we cannot figure out how the hell to get him involved in the offense.
I think, so I've always thought that Cleveland Browns fans and the media here tended to overvalue Duke Johnson. I realize he showed some flashes. I realize he had the tendency, he caught a lot of passes on bad teams that didn't have a lot of weapons. And I don't know how much of Duke Johnson's success was check down quarterbacks looking to the check down wide receiver and the running back and the safety valve, and how much of it is due to Duke Johnson being a special talent. You can't argue that he isn't a good pass catching running back, because he is, and he runs routes well as a running back. But I think a lot of this goes back to what we talked about in the first episode here. How do you use a running back as a pass catcher who isn't a viable running option? And right now, Duke Johnson hasn't shown himself to be a running back that you can consistently trust to go get you 4 or 5 yards a carry and put the ball in his hands. You put the ball in his hands on a 4th and 1. I don't know why you did Duke Johnson Metcalf up the middle on a 4th and 1, but you did, and he couldn't be trusted to get that yard. You can't trust him in a power run scheme where you're saying, I'm going to run the ball. And I think that's the problem. If you take your running back and put him on the field, you're telegraphing at this point, we're not running the ball, we're passing the ball. And most offensive coordinators, we've talked about this ad nauseum, the problem the Browns have is, please don't telegraph you're running the ball, because then you're telegraphing you're passing the ball. And make the other team guess. Make the linebackers read the play out. Make the strong safety read the play out. If you put Duke Johnson in, you're tipping your hand that it's probably a pass. It's a good chance if Duke Johnson's on the field, it's a pass. And I think that's the main problem with getting Duke Johnson touches and getting Duke Johnson involved in the game. I could be wrong, but that's what I think it comes down to. That if Duke wants to be used effectively in the passing game, he has to show that he can be effective and reliable as a runner. And I just don't think in his career, other than some flashes in the pan there one season, that he's shown that he can be an effective running back and a consistent running back. And it's not just having a 4.9 yard per carry average. It's getting to that average without carrying the ball 15 times and having one run for 40 yards and the rest of them go between 2 and 2.5. You can't do that.
Sticking with the receiving game, it's time for more Hollywood Higgins. Jarvis Landry, 15 targets, 8 catches, 103 yards. No questions there. Antonio Callaway, 4 receptions, 20 yards on 10 targets. Obviously, we know a few of those were underthrown by Tyrod. I'm over here just looking at Higgins' numbers. 3 targets, 3 catches, 32 yards. It's completely obvious that him and Baker have a great chemistry. I would not be surprised, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in the Raiders preview later, but I would not be surprised if this is a guy who starts getting 6, 7, 8 targets a game, because he's proving himself to be very, very good. And what Higgins is very, very good at is route running. And what does route running work well with? A quick, decisive, ball out of his hands quarterback who likes to throw his receivers open. If he knows where the hell his guy's going to be at all times, and he's got a guy like Higgins that he trusts, you could see some. I'm not saying Higgins is going to come out here and be a 100 yards a game guy, but this is a guy who could be catching 5 balls for 80 yards every single week moving forward.
I think you're going to see a lot more even distribution of the targets and the catches in this offense now under Baker Mayfield. I think it's good news for David Njoku. I think it's good news even for Hollywood Higgins. It's good news for Callaway. Probably see a little less activity going Jarvis Landry's way, but since we're going to be passing the ball more and completing more passes, it's probably going to come out in the wash. And the reason for that is that, look, we talked about it. Tyrod Taylor is going to stay on his first read until his first read is open, or he has to run or go to his check down. Baker Mayfield is going to be moving off of his first read a lot of times before the ball is snapped and might be jumping to his second and third read. And the guy who's open is going to get the pass. The guy who the play. He's going to look at the defense, read the defense, and the guy whose route is advantageous to that set is going to get the ball. Tyrod Taylor's not going to do that. Baker Mayfield is just that guy who's going to get the ball quicker to the open receiver and get through his progressions. So, look, Jarvis Landry was always almost going to be read one on most plays. He's your best wide receiver. He was going to be read one. Callaway was going to be read two. And how often was Tyrod Taylor getting to read two, let alone read three? Baker Mayfield's going to get to read two and read three a lot more often than Tyrod Taylor was. He just is. It's rare to say the rookie will do that, but that's who Baker is. And so I agree with you. You're going to see more Hollywood Higgins just because Baker's going to be reading through to his second and third read and getting there a lot faster, and sometimes starting on read 2 and 3 because of the pre-snap reads that he has made.
All right, everybody, you know what time it is. We have the man, the myth, the legend, the godfather of OBR Straight Talk. Lane Adkins is on the line, and we are ready, so let's just get right at it. Lane, thank you so much for joining us as usual.
What's the good word, guys?
Oh, the good word is that those dumb Bud Light victory fridges all around northeastern Ohio were finally opened. Chance of Baker Mayfield made it from Cleveland all the way to my Las Vegas vacation. And let's just talk about him because that's the hot topic. Baker Mayfield has been named the starting quarterback of the Browns. What are your thoughts on that? What are you hearing on how the locker room took the announcement of Baker being the starting quarterback and Tyrod going to the bench?
Well, let's go to the second part first. Yeah, there's a lot of guys in that locker room that were, they're happy. There's some indifference, but there's happiness seeing that, the rookie got on the field and, he produced. He's done some things that we hadn't seen the offense do in the previous, 2 games and a quarter. I mean, it was a very good effort for a rookie quarterback. And he helped his offensive line immensely by being where he was supposed to be and getting the ball out of the pocket.
No, that's something that we were talking about a little bit before we had you come on as well. It's just a complete game changer. I mean, we've thrown the numbers out there. You're talking about going from one quarterback who's holding onto the ball for 3 seconds before he throws it to another one who is getting it out in 2.5. And that makes a world of a difference for the offensive line who, looked like they were struggling with Tyrod, and for your playmakers who looked like they were having separation issues with Tyrod. But when in fact, it's all about that quarterback. So let's flip back to the first part. What did you like about what Baker Mayfield did in his first start? And obviously I don't want to put an age out there to you, but you've obviously seen a lot more of the good quarterback play than I have in my life. How does Baker Mayfield's debut compare to some of the guys like Bernie Kosar and everybody else in the past that you've seen? Because I've just seen nothing but misery essentially in my lifetime, with the exception of a few of the last years of Bernie here and a little bit of Vinny Testaverde. So you know how bad it is when I got to go to Vinny Testaverde as a good quarterback in my eyes.
Well, it comes down to what Baker did. Came on, he was cold, hit 3 of his first 4 passes. But the thing with him is that he was in command. He got in the huddle, got under center, dropped back, got the ball out quick. He was decisive. He wasn't screwing around back there, and that makes an offense. They become upbeat. Your offensive linemen suddenly look better because they're not having to try to keep their man at the point of attack that extra half a second. The quarterback's where he needs to be, or he's supposed to be in the pocket, throwing the ball downfield, which in this case against the Jets, Baker Mayfield, what he did early getting into that game, it helped loosen up that Jets defense who were playing very tight and squeezing the Browns. Baker Mayfield changed the complexion of that game within the first 10 attempts that he threw. And you could see where this game was headed as he progressed further and further, and the Jets could not stop what he was doing because he was making quick, decisive, correct reads.
Lane, I think it's no surprise that Carlos Hyde had his best game as a Cleveland Brown. Talk a little bit. We've talked about it. I've said it. Talk a little bit about what Baker Mayfield does to help the running game just by him being in there that maybe Tyrod Taylor isn't bringing as the quarterback. Because I think it's clearly obvious that the running game was far more effective once the quarterback change happened.
Tyrod Taylor is a serviceable quarterback. He can play in this league. Just the thing it comes down to is that defenses didn't respect the Browns passing game. Defenses know Tyrod Taylor isn't getting the ball out to the hashes. He's not going to attack the middle of the field. He's not going to be that guy who's just going to, step 3, 5, and 7-step drops and just let this thing go, which Baker did. He threw the ball downfield. He aggressively attacked the New York defense, something that we didn't see with Tyrod. The other thing is that Baker Mayfield is accurate. This kid has an it factor about him that we haven't seen in Cleveland in a while. You can't take anything away from the performance that he had Thursday at First Energy Stadium. Hopefully that's just the beginning of what's going to be a long career for this young man. But when you go back and you look at the tape and watch what he did, he played a very, very good game.
So back to my second part of my question, Lane. Baker Mayfield or Bernie Kosar? Who had a better rookie debut?
Well, it's entirely different ages, and I can't take anything away from my guy Bernie because I worked with and for Bernie for a long time.
That's why I'm doing the question. That's why I'm asking the question.
Very long time. Just different type of game. Excellent results. Mayfield's more of a gunslinger. Both are cerebral. I just can't take anything away from what Baker did. He came into a very tough situation on national TV in front of all the lights. I guess the Jets team that was playing well defensively, that was dominating the Browns offense in that game until Tyrod Taylor went down with a concussion. Got to hang your hat out there, man. Baker Mayfield did what he had to do.
No, it was very, very impressive. So switching over to the locker room specifically, I know you mentioned, obviously there's some guys in there that were happy about the move. I mean, they want to win football games. This organization is obviously tired of losing football games. Has there been anything, and if you can't say anything, that's fine, but I'm just curious, has there been anybody out there or any information out there that was against the move and they wanted to keep Tyrod?
No, I talked about 6 or 7 guys, and it was obvious to them. It was evident what happened when he came into the game. It was just a complete change in energy, style of play. They were just upbeat, went at it. They were efficient. They executed. There's really nothing you can say to justify him not starting or, taking a swipe at the kid not getting the opportunity going forward. It was a completely different offensive team.
Speaking of the completely different offensive team, I want to go specifically to a young man who none of us thought was going to be starting already, but they made the switch to Desmond Harrison right before the season started. And to me, from the stands, obviously, but I'm seeing progression with Desmond Harrison. Obviously, he's still missing here and there, and he's still making young rookie mistakes that he's going to have to learn. But I feel like we've already, in such a short period of time for an undrafted rookie free agent starting at left tackle, we've seen him make very big leaps in these 3 weeks. Am I wrong? Am I not seeing things correctly out there, Lane?
No, you're what you said is what it is. I mean, Desmond Harrison's a young guy that has a lot of talent that, if it wasn't for issues that he has had in his background, going back to collegiate days and, going out of school, coming back to school, playing a small college, whatnot, having an injury and illness, when we got into that bowl time, this guy can play. He's just somebody that needs to get on the field. He needs this seasoning. He needs those reps. He needs to be coached up. But what you see from the opener against the Steelers, where he had rough moments and progressed as the game went on, into New Orleans, where he played a pretty relatively good game, into last Thursday night against the Jets, where he was relatively solid too. He's not an embarrassment at left tackle. He's not Joe Thomas, but this is a guy who just continuously gets better. You can see it in his stances. He has a good punch. He's, his footwork is improving. He's still got a ways to go in the run game and some recognition. But it's a guy you can trot out there at left tackle and not expect to be blown up. Thus far in 3 games, after some rocky moments against the Steelers, he's performed.
Yeah, stick with the offense here, Lane. And one of the things that we talked about earlier before having you on here was Duke Johnson's role in this offense. And we're both kind of surprised that they haven't been able to get Duke Johnson more targets as a pass catcher, and they really haven't been able to get him involved much in this offense. Does some of that potentially change with Baker and the skill set that he brings, or are they going to make a more concerted effort for that? Or is it simply running into issues of being able to use him as a pass-catching running back when they haven't been able to use him effectively as a runner?
Well, it's a freaking travesty to start with. Duke Johnson is a weapon. You know, the guy, he's not a guy that's going to sit there and poke the ball 15 times a game. You know, he's not a guy that you got to split wide and have him in the passing game 55 plays a game either. But the problem is that when you have a talent like that and you don't utilize him at all, you know, you better look in the mirror and find out what the hell you're doing, because as an offensive coordinator, you're failing. You know, this guy is talented. This guy has proven that he can run the football on occasion, that he can come out of the backfield and catch the ball. You know, but the thing that may be the most troubling about this is that when they don't utilize him, bring him in, even the threat of him, their base set offense, they generally, you got an idea of what they're going to do. You know, Carlos Hyde's lined up. You got one or two tight ends. You generally have an idea what's coming. A guy like Duke Johnson changes the pace. It changes the complexion of what an offense can do. And now what's going to happen with a guy like Baker Mayfield, who is good at finding guys? You know, a guy like Duke Johnson can come out of the backfield and find some room and make a lot of noise. And I expect to see Duke Johnson, his efficiency and opportunity pick up as we go along here in the weeks to come.
Do they have to use him effectively as a running back, though, as a runner? He doesn't have to carry the ball 15 times, as you said, but does he have to be a credible threat to run the ball? Because I'm just wondering if maybe if they're thinking that he's not, if they can't use him as a credible running back, which he hasn't been the most consistent, efficient runner, are they telegraphing? Is that maybe the fear, exactly what you just said? By bringing him in, they're telegraphing that they're passing the ball and tipping the defense off to that. Could that be part of this, or is it just that they haven't figured out, in your mind, how to utilize him yet, and they're failing, as you said?
Well, you go back and look at Duke Johnson, his utilization since he's been in Cleveland, he's proven that he shows the ability to run the football. Not somebody that you're going to have in there toting the ball 3 times, you know, every 3 downs. But he's already proven that he can run the football. You can line him up in the backfield and still cause confusion with him coming, you know, getting out into the passing game, you know, running off tackle, you know, taking up between the tackles. You have to show a little bit more than just, okay, Duke Johnson, his ass isn't on the field because Todd Haley doesn't want to get Carlos Hyde off the field. Well, you know, when you see Carlos Hyde on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down, and you're running off tackle, or you're running between the guards, and you're gaining 2.1 yards a carry, and then next thing you know, you're in 3rd and 6. You know, the defense is going to tee off on you, and then, you know, what are you going to do? Shit the quarterback's under fire. You have to mix this thing up, and I think you're going to see more of that. I think there's a confidence that they have with what Baker Mayfield can do. I think it's going to improve what we're going to see them do as an offense. I think Duke Johnson's going to be more. You know, and the same thing should be said. They drafted a running back in the 2nd round who can run the football, but they just rely. There's a veteran reliance here on some of these guys, and I'm not sure exactly what, you know, the grasp of it is. Is it because they just think these guys are better, or is it, you know, a thing that keeps respect and camaraderie going? You know, it's something we got to find out, because, you know, guys like Chubb need to be on the field too. We have to start seeing some of this talent out there. And maybe with the insertion of Baker Mayfield, we're going to start slowly seeing a little bit of change on what's going on here.
Lane, switching over to the defensive side of the ball, how impressed have you been with Larry Ogunjobi? I mean, all game long, I just look up and I just see him being a disruptive force in the middle of that defensive line. And especially given the state and the lack of depth on the interior line coming into the season, I've just been really impressed with what he's been able to do as a force right next to Myles Garrett.
Well, we talked up Larry O last year as a rookie, where he had a lot of shining moments. He played the run well. We knew that a year into the system, off-season workouts, just more experience and getting stronger, more physical, that he would come back in the year 2 being an even better, more of a driving force. He showed some dynamic that if he put that work in, you're seeing where it's paying off with him today. You know, this guy is just a high motor, high energy, tough, physical, quick, tear into your ass defensive lineman. And it's the kind of guy that you want to see. He's a great story.
No, and another guy that really impressed me this week, especially with Ogba out, talked about it a little bit ago, but Chris Smith finally, when that signing was announced this offseason, a lot of people were like, oh, he's just a guy. But when we looked at things last year and when Ogba and Garrett went down, there was nobody behind them that was a proven pass rusher, proven defensive lineman who could make plays behind the line of scrimmage. And Smith came out and had 3 tackles for a loss. I was really impressed with seeing him. Obviously, he's not a long-term starting option, but he showed as a rotational player, especially against the Jets, that he can make plays.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Smith's one of those guys who's been around a while, who's had some very good moments in this game, and he's had some down moments. He's not a guy that you're going to expect to be that guy who's going to steal the edge and make plays and, tackles for losses and play the run extremely well all the time, but against the Jets he played well. He's not Ogba against the run. He shows flashes where he can bring more heat off the edge than say an Ogba. He's what he is. He's a veteran who was brought in here to do exactly what he did Thursday night. Play the game right, don't make mistakes, play within that structure, and he had a hell of a game.
So I think let's go ahead and let's move forward, because I think that was just awesome feeling overall with the Jets. We got the victory against them. Looks like, knock on wood, we found our quarterback of the future, at least after one game. Let's move to the Raiders, because this is a team for me, and I was in Vegas and I was sitting there with some Raiders fans while this game was going on, and they sound like Browns fans. Like the Browns fans of old, and which is mind-boggling to me, because you are supposed to have some pieces on this Oakland team. Yes, they traded away Khalil Mack, but you have pieces like Derek Carr, Amari Cooper, Marshawn Lynch, who's getting up there in age, Jordy Nelson up there in age, but had a big game on Sunday. They've got pieces on this team where they're supposed to be competing, and they're 0-3. And the Browns are going to get 10 days off to go in there with their brand new starting shiny rookie quarterback and a 1-1-1 record. I mean, the Browns have been much better than the Oakland Raiders this year. And I know it's a road game and going across country does weird things for teams, but I'm pretty optimistic going into this game. What about you, Lane?
The Browns have to go out there to Oakland and not become the bride of Chucky. They need to pull out the machete and just cut the head off of this Raider team immediately, and I expect them to come out and be aggressive. It's going to be an interesting game. The Raiders have been, they've been up and down thus far. They've played well offensively, then they've played like garbage offensively. They've played well defensively, and then they've played like garbage defensively. It's like a bipolar team, much like the Cleveland Browns have been for a long time. Interesting, they trade away their best player, Khalil Mack. They can't generate a pass rush. They're not tackles for losses. You wonder the direction of an organization like that. The Browns are going to go into Oakland at the right time, coming off a win, feeling good about themselves. Now to find out, to see what kind of coach Hugh Jackson is, to see if this team can build upon that success that they had Thursday night against the Jets. This is a big game. This is a game that could set this team and this organization forward with a win. There's the opportunities there for them to start winning football games, to go out to Oakland and blow this game, which I believe they should win, even though I think they're a 2.5-point dog, and that's because they're playing in Oakland. To me, it's inexcusable to go lose this game. This is the better football team. The Cleveland Browns are a much better team than what anybody really realizes or wants to give them credit for. It's going to be a good game.
It's great to hear you say that, and it's a true statement that the Browns are the better football team. Going in to play anybody to say this is a game the Browns should win, they are the better football team, and to actually agree with that statement and to believe it. One of the keys that obviously is going to be important every single week with this Browns defense is Myles Garrett, and specifically what they're doing on this defense to stop the run, because if there's been a weakness on this defense, it's been against the run. The question I talked to Bob about earlier, and maybe you can elaborate a bit and tell us what you're seeing. One of the keys to stopping the run will be setting the edge at the defensive end position. Myles Garrett, what Bob and I have seen watching the games is that sometimes he's a little bit into the backfield way too quick to be out there to set the edge on those running plays. Is that schematically by the design of Greg Williams and Hugh Jackson? They're telling him, go get the quarterback, and someone else is supposed to be assigned to that edge? Or is this Myles Garrett maybe being a little over-aggressive on the blitz? And If so, will the Raiders try to exploit that with Marshawn Lynch off tackle?
Well, if the Raiders don't try to exploit that, then, John Gruden should just go back to the bench, to the booth, and talk about football rather than coach it, because the Browns setting the edge, the Browns with linebackers taking bad angles, late angles, defensive linemen getting turned a little bit has been a problem that this team has struggled a bit with, especially teams that, zone run. They've had some issues with that. What happens is that a team like the Browns, they've taken on the personality of their defensive coordinator, Greg Williams. He's fiery, he's aggressive, he's loud, he's boisterous, not really disciplined. And that's what you see a lot from this Browns defense. And what's going to happen is that they have to maintain their responsibility. Myles Garrett's coming like a freaking freight train. And, there's nothing wrong with that. My problem is when they got Myles Garrett dropping in the coverage, I like to put my foot right up somebody's ass, because there's no reason that guy should be dropping back. Okay, but besides all that bullshit, he has to get after the quarterback. Sometimes, your linebackers are a little slow in sealing the edge. It's a lot of it's schematic, a lot of it's discipline, a lot of it's something that they have to work on. And that's something. I
think we had a little bit of the gremlins in the system there, Lane. We lost you at the end of a second there, but I think I got to agree with a little bit what you're saying. It's probably schematic, that they're probably turning Myles Garrett loose and saying, go be aggressive. And some of it is probably also the player and technique and working with Myles Garrett as he sticks around longer to read that play out. And then some of it is just taking on the personality of being this aggressive defense, and aggression will lead to over pursuit and not maintaining your gap assignment and over following a play and leaving you vulnerable to misdirection or counter plays. So I think that's probably where you're going with it. It probably is a hybrid of these things. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because this aggression is what's leading to this defense making all these turnovers that it's making too. It's kind of a you live by the sword, you die by the sword type of deal.
Oh, absolutely. But what you see with a defense like that, when you're creating turnovers, you have to be able to take advantage of, and that's something this team has not been able to do. Turnovers generally come in bunches. They generally don't consistently roll the way they have for the Browns. So they got to take advantage of these opportunities, because they just don't consistently happen. They're doing a lot to generate them. They're taking a lot of chances. They're getting away with some stuff that they shouldn't get away with. But thus far, they've been successful doing it. And, that's how this team is going to play. They're going to be aggressive, and sometimes they're not going to show a lot of discipline doing it.
All right. Time to put you on the spot here, Lane. Browns Raiders, Sunday, 4 p.m., 4:05 to be exact. I don't want to sham anybody of 5 minutes here. Who do you have winning, and who do you think the key player is in the game?
Well, I guess I could jump up and down like a couple other guys who like to hear themselves talk and say, oh, the Browns are great, the Browns are winning. What it's going to come down to is the Browns taking care of the football, making plays. I believe the better team should win this game. I think the Browns are going to win this game. I'm going to come down to it. I'm going to think Baker Mayfield is going to be the guy who shines. Jarvis Landry is going to make a lot of noise. And I think Cleveland comes out of there winning that game by at least a touchdown.
All right. Well, on that note, Lane, we got a Browns victory by a touchdown, and we're going to let you go. So we appreciate you for coming on, as always, and look forward to hopefully having you on next week after another Browns victory Monday. Well, it wasn't a Monday. Wasn't a Monday this time, but you know what? This is our Browns Victory Monday show. So, Lane, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Well, I just have to say thank you. I know we already just let him go off the phone, but that was just great stuff from Lane as usual. It was really intriguing to me that he's spoken with several members of the Browns organization on the team side from the locker room, and they're all behind Baker. That was really exciting to hear. Let's just continue right where we left off and go with the Raiders game. The Browns are heading out to Oakland. They're traveling across the country, which is usually not a great experience for a lot of teams. Especially with your rookie quarterback going across the country. I mean, Baker showed a lot of good things at home, feeding off of the home crowd, but this is going to be his first big test. And not big test because the Raiders have not been a good team, but big test in the fact that you have a rookie quarterback traveling across the country to play in what's going to be a ruckus environment, because Raiders fans are every bit as crazy as Browns fans. They're not being like Bills fans jumping off of tables, jumping off of cars through tables crazy, but they are a very, very angry group. So Baker is definitely going to get he's going to go from one end of the spectrum to the other. One of the best fan bases, home crowds in the NFL, going to one of the best fan bases, away crowds to play. I mean, it's going to be a very difficult environment for them. What are you looking at for Baker Mayfield and the Browns to do to jump out on the Raiders early?
Well, first off, I think that one of the key things we have to remember this week is that the Jets were game planning for Tyrod Taylor. They were installing a defensive game plan for Tyrod Taylor on a short week. And that played into Baker Mayfield's hands and Todd Haley's hands when you brought in the backup quarterback because the defense wasn't prepared for him. John Gruden has got a full week to set a defense in place to pressure and take advantage of a rookie quarterback. I'm not saying it's going to be successful, but it is a different thing to come in off the bench when the defense is game planned for the other quarterback who is stylistically very different from you. So that's the first thing to watch in this test and to see how Baker handles that and if he regresses. But I'm going to say that the key to the Browns' success this week against the Raiders is the same thing that I've said the key is all year. A lot of it begins and ends with Carlos Hyde in the running game. If you can be a multi-dimensional offense that helps your offensive coordinator and your quarterback and your receivers, because if there's no threat of a running game, then linebackers can get into their drop earlier and free safeties can be more roaming and they don't have to, and strong safeties don't have to be worrying if they have to be up in run support. And the key to that is an effective running game and an effective Carlos Hyde. Does he have to go off for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns? No. But you want to see Carlos Hyde be able to carry the ball 15 to 20 times and be averaging around 4.5, 4 carry, and to be able to be effective on the ground and keep teams guessing. You want to be able to hand the ball off to Carlos Hyde and put yourself in 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5 and open things up and give your rookie quarterback the advantage of making John Gruden and the Raiders defense be in schemes and be in sets that have to defend against a run or a pass and have that, and then have play action be effective. All of that helps Baker Mayfield. All that helps a decisive, quick quarterback like Baker Mayfield. And I think as much as we're excited about Baker, and it's easy to put this all on Baker Mayfield and say he's the key player, I really think that if Carlos Hyde is non-existent, it makes Baker Mayfield's job that much harder. You got to have an effective running game. And I think it's no coincidence that Hyde looked better with Baker Mayfield, but I think it's no coincidence that the passing game looked better because the running game was effective on Thursday too.
One thing I've been paying attention to with the Raiders is the fact that no Khalil Mack. What's their defense doing? Obviously, they're struggling big time to, get a pass rush going. They're middle of the pack to lower end. I think they're about 20th coming in to this game in total pass yards given up per game. They're bottom 20. I think they're giving up nearly 400 yards of total offense per game. So one of the things I'm looking at here is, while the Jets, they were scheming on a short week for Tyrod Taylor, but how is Oakland going to really prepare their already not great pass defense to go from a team that was probably looking to throw the ball 23 to 24 times a game with Tyrod Taylor to a team that with Baker Mayfield, now you're getting into the situation of a quarterback that Todd Haley likes to coach, a guy who he's not afraid to let sling the ball 35, 40 times a game if necessary, a guy that there's going to be a lot of volume going on. So when I think of that, a lot of people, they go, oh, well, if your quarterback's going to throw the ball 35 to 40 times, you're probably playing from behind. But, you have a lot of quick passes, quick screens, things to get the, extension of the run game type stuff. What I see with a guy like Baker, and what I think could play very, very well into the Browns' favor with how bad the Raiders' defense has been, is the opportunity to be susceptible to big plays. So, with that volume passing comes more and more wearing down of the defense. And you're already talking about an already not very good, not very deep defense. So with Baker, I think one of the keys that the Browns and Haley need to take advantage of is trying to get the ball into their playmakers' hands in space. So get that ball out into Duke's hands early. Get that ball out into Callaway on a quick slant type of deal like we saw against the Giants in the preseason. Let him make a man miss. This Raiders defense is not talented. They just don't have any playmakers. I mean, you've got a guy in Carl Joseph who's supposed to be one of the anchors to the back end of their secondary, and he's been dealing with a hamstring, and it doesn't sound like he's going to play. So for me, the key to the game is going to be just taking advantage of who the quarterback Baker Mayfield is and getting the ball into his playmakers' hands in space. I know, obviously, I completely agree with you. We need to run the ball, get Carlos in the running game going. But I want to see Haley really, really work. I mean, 10 days is a lot to get Baker ready. And I want to see him just try to expose the hell out of this Raiders defense from the first play of the game.
What I think you need to watch for, you said, how does John Gruden scheme up this not talented Raiders defense to go get a quarterback like Baker Mayfield? I think what you got to watch for is, you're probably not going to get to him because the ball's out quick, even for a rookie quarterback, and you don't have a great pass rush. So if I was John Gruden, if I was the Raiders defense, what I would be doing is showing the rookie quarterback blitz and dropping more zone coverage in disguised zones so that there's a linebacker where he wasn't expecting to see one. He's going to think that he's got a blitzing Mike linebacker, and the Mike linebacker shows blitz and drops back and drops into a passing lane where Baker Mayfield wasn't expecting that guy to be. Maybe you drop a lineman into, and you Lane didn't like Myles Garrett dropping into coverage. Maybe what you do here is you drop a defensive end into a spot in a screen or into a spot in a quick slant where they're not supposed to be. And you show him some of these exotic coverages that a Baker Mayfield's not used to reading out. And you take advantage of the fact that he wants to make these quick throws, and you disguise that coverage at him. Do the Raiders have the skill to pull that off? I don't know. Does Baker Mayfield have the ability to read that out? We hope so. But I think you might take advantage of trying to confuse Baker Mayfield that way if you were trying to scheme something at a rookie quarterback and disguise those coverages and get a little more complex with it. However, I agree with you, and I agree with Lane. The Browns are supposed to win this game. The Oakland Raiders are not that good of a team right now. And John Gruden isn't working with an incredibly talented team yet. And this is one of those rare cases where I can tell you that I think the Browns top to bottom are the better team. And I think the Browns are supposed to go in there and win this game on Sunday, especially with 10 days to get healthy and 10 days to get ready for it. You're the better team. You've had more rest, and you're going to be the healthier team. Just go in and win this game. And quite frankly, I'd like to tell you this is a game that shouldn't be contested. I think it probably will, but I think this is one of those games in the second half the Browns make enough plays to win this game because, again, this is nice to be able to say the Browns have more playmakers. And in the end, playmakers will win the game. Playmakers will separate. And the Browns have the better defense. They have better playmakers on defense. And ultimately, they have more playmakers on offense at this point and more weapons to beat the Raiders. And this is one of those games that probably looks close in the first half, and the Browns should separate late in the third and in the fourth. I don't think we have to have a nail biter this time in the last 5 minutes, wondering if it's going to come down to a field goal kick or if we need to get a defensive stop.
It's really weird to me that we're saying that the Browns have more playmakers. Because when I look up and down the Raiders roster, especially on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, you've got Amari Cooper. You've got Jared Cook. You've got Jordy Nelson. You got Marshawn Lynch. You've got names. But Amari Cooper has been non-existent in that offense.
Amari Cooper was supposed to be the next big thing, and he just didn't develop into it.
I mean, we're talking about he's coming off a week against Miami. 2 catches for 17 yards on 5 targets. On the other end of the spectrum, Jordy Nelson, 6 catches for 173 and a touchdown. Jordy Nelson's like 32 years old, 33 years old, and he's out here just destroying the production. And like, this is mind-boggling to me because Amari Cooper is Derek Carr's guy. Like, that has been his guy since he's got in the league. And so for me, I'm wondering, I'm hoping that Greg Williams doesn't sleep on Amari Cooper, and this game is like Amari Cooper's coming out party against the Browns secondary. I don't know how the Raiders have been using him. I don't know if they've been using him more in the slot or keeping him outside. Haven't really paid that much attention to their overall snaps. I'm going to look into that this week, but I'm a little bit. Listen, I'm with you and Lane. I think the Browns should easily control this game, and they should come out and win this game. This is one of those games for me that it's like, this is that moment to prove to everybody you're not the Browns. You know what I mean? This is the game that in the history, when the Browns win a game and get everybody's hopes up, they go out and they lay an egg and they get blown out. So I just want to make sure that Greg Williams and everybody on that defensive staff are doing everything to not forget about guys like Amari Cooper, who have already shown the potential to have big games out of, just on a regular basis. Or a guy like Jared Cook, who has been one of Derek Carr's favorite options, and he plays a position that the Browns typically and historically cannot defend at tight end. And, I saw a graphic from Pro Football Focus earlier that the Browns are one of the top 5 defenses in the league against the pass. Well, this is a team that's going to throw the hell out of the ball. Like, They're going to come out. Derek Carr is going to throw the ball 35 to 40 times a game. And we're actually, I think this is going to be, even though we've already played two future Hall of Fame quarterbacks, I think this is the game that is going to kind of be that not first, but like that test of, all right, how do the Browns deal with being a winning team? How do the Browns deal with being expected to win football games? And can Greg Williams' defense continue at the pace it's been playing at? Because there's a lot of potential here on Oakland's offense to just light up the Browns.
There is. Oakland is this confusing team because, as you said, they have a lot of names. But Oakland is a team that has really disappointed people and gone in a direction other than they were expected to go. Amari Cooper has regressed. He caught 48 passes last year in 14 games for something like 600-700 yards. And he was a guy who was a 1,000-yard receiver the years before. Derek Carr hasn't progressed the way that you'd hope that he would progress. I mean, his overall production numbers have gone down. His passer rating has stayed fairly respectable, as has his touchdown to interception rating. But Derek Carr was supposed to be the next big thing, the next great thing. And people don't talk about Derek Carr as the next elite quarterback anymore. They just don't. And beast mode, he's not beast mode anymore. I mean, for an old running back in his 30s, I mean, Marshawn Lynch is what, 32, 33, 30. And in running back years, that's like 57. Running back is a position that at 28 years old, you're old. And at 30 years old, you're done. No one's supposed to be doing what Adrian Peterson is doing. Last guy to do that was Curtis Martin, who had an effective and insane year at 34 years old and almost rushed for 2,000 yards. Beast mode, you're not worrying about beast mode destroying you. You shouldn't be, at least. He's effective, but he's not what he once was. You don't have to fear him at this point. And Amari Cooper isn't talked about as one of the top 5 wide receivers in the league anymore. He's just not. And he was for a minute. And this is a team that is just disappointed on Oakland. So it's strange to say the Browns have more playmakers and more weapons on offense at the moment, the more effective offense. But ultimately, I think that's true. Jordy Nelson had a great week last week. But I don't fear Jordy Nelson beating Denzel Ward up and down the field. He might run better routes and beat Denzel Ward with his route running. He may beat Terrence Mitchell with his route running. But Jordy Nelson isn't the threat that he once was either. And he had a good week and he's got some veteran moves, but I don't think you fear that you can't cover Jordy Nelson one-on-one if you're the Cleveland Browns. I mean, Denzel Ward has drawn tougher assignments at this point, and he's done fine with them. Terrence Mitchell has drawn tougher assignments, done fine with them. You haven't faced better running backs. I guess you could argue in week 2 against New Orleans, you did face a more dynamic running back than Marshawn Lynch at this point. I feel like you faced a better offense in New Orleans and you held up very well. And it's easy at this point to fear and say, this is where the Browns become the Browns again. And it's bizarro Browns and they let you down. They pull the rug out from under you. Lucy pulls the football away. But all things considered, I think you should go into Oakland to win because I do think the Browns are the better team right now. They've played better so far this year. They've showed better so far this year. I think the Browns are the better team and should go in to win this game.
So what's your prediction then?
I'm going to say that this is a game the Browns win 27-17. And it's one of those games that's probably like 17-14 at half, one way or the other. And you start to see the Browns separate that in the second half. I think this is a close game in the first half. And the Browns pull away down the stretch. With defensive adjustments, their defensive line wears down Oakland's offensive line. You start to get some disruption in the second half. And Baker Mayfield finds some big plays. You can't bottle up Callaway all game. You can't bottle up Jarvis Landry all game. And eventually that shows in the second half and they start to separate. In essence, it's going to be like an Ohio State game where they're hanging around in the first half, but in the end, the talent shows and you pull away in the second half.
You know what I love about, before I give my prediction, about this team right now is the fact that we have a guy in Jarvis Landry. 2 out of the 3 games to start his Browns career, over 100 yards receiving. And he's not someone that we don't really talk about him too much. You know, we haven't really mentioned him too much tonight, other than when we were talking about earlier about how he had 15 targets and 8 catches, because it's a good feeling. Like, it's a good feeling to just have a number 1 wide receiver who's doing his thing, no matter who the quarterback is. And he's just somebody we don't have to worry about.
You almost got to go back to Webster Slaughter to have that guy. The Browns have not had a history of having great wide receivers. Maybe Braylon Edwards in that year that Derek Anderson was here.
And what I love about Landry right now is he's proving all of these people wrong. All these people are like, he's just a slot guy.
I'm sorry, I'm forgetting Josh Gordon too. But I mean, it was that one year, and it's easy to forget it. But Sorry.
No, you're good. But I just love that Landry's proving everybody wrong. They're like, oh, he's nothing but a short yardage guy. He's nothing but a slot receiver. And Haley's been using him more in an Antonio Brown type role than a slot receiver role. And he's thriving at it. I mean, I forget the exact number, but I thought that I saw somewhere floating around. It was like 4.2 or 4.3 more yards average ADOT. So like this is where he's catching the ball down the field further, and he's making big things happen. But anyways, so the reason I brought up Landry is because going into my prediction, I think that this could have a potential to be a big time Jarvis Landry game, which is weird to say because he has 2 games of 100 yards. But I think this is the week where we get to see Jarvis Landry blessing all of Oakland with multiple touchdown receptions. My prediction, I'm going a little bit bigger. Maybe it was my weekend in Vegas and I've just fully embraced Baker Mania, running wild all over Cleveland. But I'm going with a 31-17 Browns victory. And Baker Mayfield going out here and putting up his first 300-yard game as a passer in the NFL.
I can see that happening. I really can. I've been shying away from the big predictions after my week 1 bomb, where I went full fan mode and called for them to run away from the Steelers. That didn't happen. But no, I mean, that can absolutely happen. This is a game. Can't say it enough. I'm saying it over and over again like a broken record, though. The Browns are the better team. And they should win this game because we just haven't been able to say that much in recent years.
Well, on that note, everybody, thank you for bearing with us for this amazing podcast. I'm hungover from Vegas. He's dealing with some migraine issues going on. So, we appreciate you all for hanging in there with us. We felt like it was a fun, entertaining
for the
podcast,
first 20 minutes of this podcast, there was a multicolored psychedelic lightning bolt coming out of Bob's head running up to the ceiling of the studio. Every time I looked over, I'm not lying to you guys, I saw a lightning bolt of psychedelic colors from Bob's head to the ceiling. That's distracting. That's where I'm at right now. That's where my frame of mind is. So that's my excuse for anything I said tonight that makes no sense.
Nah, it was good. On another note, obviously, we have to thank Lane. Lane, thank you so much, as usual, for coming on, delivering that straight talk right out there to the OBR listeners. Everybody, like we've mentioned before, subscribe. We're everywhere. Look up OBR Straight Talk on all of your favorite podcast networks. Hit that subscribe button. Drop us comments on there. Leave us ratings, reviews. We're trying to climb the boards here and become everybody's favorite Cleveland Browns podcast. So tell your friends. Tell everybody, rate, subscribe, love us. We appreciate you. As always, go Browns. Let's have another Victory Monday next week.